What's going on, guys? Doing my usual Wednesday night live stream. This is Book. Given a little bit of time here, like usual, for people to stroll in that want to partake live. Probably be about 15 or 20 minutes here of explaining a few setups, why exactly I like them, what sectors I'm going to be looking at into the rest of the week, into next week, and just some broader thoughts on the market. So we'll get rolling here in about 30 seconds. Just let a few more bodies roll in, and then do 15 minutes ish here on some setups that I'm looking at. So get started here in a minute. Hope everyone's had a decent week. Not a lot's happened. If you look at the SPY daily chart, it's been three, for the most part, consolidation candles. So maybe it seems like a lot happened this week, especially with the Poland news and everything. But in reality, on the daily time frame of most charts, not a lot has happened this week. So hopefully you guys have managed to make it out all right. I'm pretty flat overall this week. Had a nice Thursday and Friday, obviously, since the market was flying. And that's definitely when I, like to overtrade a little bit. But been pretty flat this week. Get started here in just a second on the charts I want to look at. All right. So if you can see, obviously, you see Rivian on my screen right now. And this is one that I am still long on. The swing idea from yesterday obviously did not pan out today. Rivian didn't really have many buyers at all. We saw the similar thing in a lot of growth stocks. I think a lot of names like Coin, Roblox, just similar names like that underperformed pretty heavily today. And the reason I am still long Rivian, although the swing idea did not work out heading into today, is and you guys can probably understand why I was trying not to cut the December contracts on Rivian, although they were down more than, a bigger percent than I would like to swallow on a trade. They're down 50%. I did average down, but just the concept of this daily candle today being on very low volume. Today's candle on Rivian, obviously price-wise, not attractive at all, right? But then you look and you see that the volume today was very low. And then you look at the volume profile and you see that we have a very large demand spot here around 33. Really, I think 33.20 and 33.60 are the two largest pivots. But, just the way that this chart pulled back on low volume, pulled back here on low volume to this very large demand spot, makes me think that there could be still some upside in the cards, and that this setup wants to bounce either tomorrow or Friday. And so I will still be watching Rivian just from that perspective. Obviously, if we end up losing the 33 level, I think there's a very clear risk here around 33. I will not want to be long Rivian any longer if we start to trade under this volume profile down into this zone. That's not a zone where I want to be long. But, if we're going to fade back on low volume and bounce off of this shelf, that's going to be a name I want to be long on, because we could probably test up to this 35-ish level right around here, this 35-ish level, and potentially even higher when you see this room up here. And so we'll see which way this one trades. I think that 33 spot is very clear. If it loses that, I'm not going to be interested in trying to force any type of upside trade. But I do think that we still have a shot. And I think that 33.60 will be really probably the level I'm trying to play long through. I'm even open to adding maybe some weekly calls, smaller size tomorrow for a day trade type scenario. I just don't know what we're going to see yet. But I do know that I want to be watching Rivian tomorrow still. Although, did burn probably a few people, including myself and Mans, I do still think that it's a setup I want to continue watching. So that is Rivian. And then we should probably look at Run, which I did enter a swing trade on today. Mans also entered the same swing trade, and so it's definitely the solar sector really overall. I hope this is big enough here, because I think that this profile here is important. Really, I think the solar sector overall, not a secret that it's one of the stronger places in the market, if not the strongest right now. And it's due to earnings beats in names like Enphase, ENPH, SunPower, SPWR, even names like Sedgi or whatever, SEDG, and Run here. All earnings beats, and they all still seem to be bull flagging. And it's not a pretty bull flag by any means. But I do still think that names like SPWR, Run, SEDG, and ENPH are setting up into pretty nice bullish patterns still. And I think that the interesting thing to note is, yes, we are, because this traded down to 1860. And now I'm trying to long the stock at 3130. And I think a lot of people, they would say, okay, you missed the move. This is looking like an overextended chart, but this is where, I think my edge presents itself a lot of the time. And maybe on some charts that some would think are looking toppy, you see this candle, you see these wicks here, definitely an overextension up. And I think a lot of people would look at that chart and think, you missed the move, this is an overextension. But when I look at this chart, I see 4 days of declining volume consolidation, and we can zoom in here. What I see on Run is you click on their earnings here, they beat earnings by like 1,700%. So it's not a joke. That is a very insane earnings beat. 630 million revenue to 560 estimate. So massive beat along with the rest of the space. And then I see 4 days of declining volume consolidation right here. So to me, on the Run daily chart, we have a very textbook bull flag pattern. And of course, any setup can fail. I always make sure to kind of throw that in there, because I don't want anybody full porting these setups or using crazy size, especially right now in this market where it's, so whipsawy. But this is definitely a setup that I want to be trading. It's why I entered it in the 2K challenge. I do have a few contracts of the 35 calls for December, but I just think this to me has a nice chance of maybe testing up to, 3170-ish is really the breakout spot on Run. It's kind of rough. We see this high at 3179, so 3180-ish, I guess, is probably the last line in the sand here. And then we've got room. We saw it on this candle. We saw a quick move up. Didn't stick, but this is a nice zone here, and I think it's largely probably created by this action here too. You see there's a gap here we're trying to trade right up into. You see we're trading right here. There's a gap over here that could be cut through very quickly, which is exactly what happened. If you look at the line that I have on the chart right now, this gap here lines up perfectly with this wick. So that move can happen tomorrow or Friday very quickly again. And so that's why I'm long Run. I think it's a good bull flag pattern. And we will see how it trades. I've got time on the contracts. And I think really probably a loss of $30 would be the line in the sand for me to get out of that trade. Is probably that 30 psych. Because you see there's pretty clear room below too. I don't want to face this amount of drawdown. And so as long as we hold 30, I'm going to be definitely long Run. And I think through 3170, 3180-ish, this setup can break out and get some legs. So this is another one of my favorites over the next 2 days. And then I suppose we better take a look at SPY, an obligatory look at SPY. I can turn these lines off just so we can get a clean look at it for a second. I think a lot of people might be looking at this SPY chart from a bearish bias, from a bearish standpoint, and I don't know. I don't think that totally makes a ton of sense to me when you look at really the path. Like if you just look at this chart from an unbiased perspective, not accounting for, a million different things, and you just look at this chart for what it is, this daily pattern, we have a high volume move up, another pretty decent volume day that resulted in, a 1% update for the S&P, so still some progress here. And then we see 3 days of lower volume that really went nowhere. And so that's why I said, nothing has really happened this week. It may seem like a lot has happened, but nothing has. And so if you're somebody who thinks, you've missed a lot of moves this week, I don't think you have at all. I haven't been trading as actively the last couple of days just because I want to see range break. I want to be trading this day. I want to be trading this day. I want to be trading this day. I don't want to do as much trading on these days and this day and these days and these days. It's like it's very difficult to have a feel for when those are going to occur. But the goal, I think any trader's goal should be, learning to be able to trade far less during this and attack this. And that's basically what I've done over the past, 2 weeks. I really haven't made that much money on any days outside of Thursday and Friday. I've been very flat. I haven't, gotten beat too badly at all. I've been very flat outside of these 2 days, and I made enough money on these 2 days to feel okay with chilling on these days. And that's just kind of my perspective on things, is doing your absolute best to try to understand when something like this candle that we saw today is going to occur. And there's still trades. Like, I know this might sound silly when you think back to the action that we saw today, because SPY had range. There was downside range. It was snappy. I think it was very difficult to trade, but there was money to be made and there was decent sized moves. But then you look at the daily chart and you see that's our candle. And so, I think it's just a huge part of the game is understanding when you're going to get these kind of trend moves and when, okay. And this is kind of pretty much what I expected, right? Because we were so overextended. We went from 375 to 400, 403 or whatever in just a few days. And so, just because we're not still going up doesn't mean, it's time to flip bearish and short the market. It just doesn't, because a market can't go straight up. Stocks have to breathe eventually. And in my opinion, I think that there's a chance that that's all we're seeing these past 3 days is low volume, digestion, consolidation. I mean, that's what we've seen so far. And not to get too bullish and too far ahead of myself, but I'm excited to trade upside tomorrow. And I think that SPY calls, Rivian calls, and what was the other setup? Run calls, SPY calls, and Rivian calls are probably the 3 things I'm most excited about tomorrow. And we just need to see which direction we go next on volume. Nothing matters from here until we see a move on increased volume. And whichever way that ends up going is going to carry some weight, because we're at a tipping point here. We're chopping in a tight range, trading in a very tight range on low volume. And so somebody's going to step up. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or Friday. I hope it is. I guess there's always a chance with options expiration on Friday. There's always a chance that we just chop for the rest of the week and it gets manipulated. But, I think there's a move coming here, and I don't want to be too biased and say it's going to be buyers. That's just what I'm going to assume, because I'm always going to assume trend continuation when we see low volume consolidation like this. It's just naturally what you're supposed to do, in my opinion. So we will see what the next direction comes, out of this formation here, because we are at a tipping point, and I think that we will see better range soon. And so that's what I'm looking out for. I'll be watching those names that I just talked about, guys. I think solar, super notable, probably the strongest sector right now. We've got XLE and some of those energy names topping out a little bit. And so I think that the solar sector is probably the strongest one on the market right now. So I'll be watching there. I also think I want to look at Tilray real quick. Tilray, if you look at it from this perspective here. Where was I looking at Tilray from? Here we go. Yeah, I mean, we've got UC Tilray respect a very strong demand zone here around it dipped under 4 and they trapped it and they ended up closing it at 408. And so for some reason I still think that there might be a trade here in the weed sector, because you look at something like GRWG, this thing made it an insane move. It's up 100% off bottom, over 100% off bottom. And so it's interesting to look at a lesser known, maybe lesser traded weed name like that, and then looking at some of the retail favorites like ACB, a Tilray. Look at ACB, guys. That to me looks like a bull flag pattern. High volume move up, and then 1, 2, 3 days of, a little bit of pullback, consolidation, but declining volume on ACB as well. So, not to say these are for sure going to go. Any setup can fail, but I think that ACB and Tilray are probably worth keeping an eye on, especially considering the fact that they love to rip on Fridays, guys. We've talked about that too. A lot of these growthier names, something like a Weed Stock or even a Rivian or a Roblox or a Coin, those names love to rip on Thursdays and Fridays. And so I think that it's something worth watching into the end of the week here. And then, like I said, there's so much data dropping every single morning right now. It seems like every morning we wake up, it's job numbers, non-farm payroll, unemployment, CPI data, PPI data, or whatever acronym is next. There's something every morning. And so that's going to make any overnight trades you're taking riskier by default, just with the way the market is right now. So I would be mindful of that. Any positions that I'm taking into the night or into the weekend, I'm always being mindful of my sizing. If the trade goes terribly wrong for me, it's not going to be the end of the world. And you need to make sure it's not the end of the world for you too, because there's been a lot of stuff in pre-market that's definitely a little bit like binary events happening, and just data every morning. And the market can turn on a dime so quickly. So I would definitely be mindful. And it's not a market where you should ever be taking a position where, if that trade goes way against you and you're fucked, that you're not actually fucked, right? Like you need to make sure that you're sizing responsibly in this type of volatility. And I still think there's plenty of money to be made responsibly. And so I know I've made a very decent chunk of money without any type of crazy sizing. And so I think that that's something I would be mindful of. But I think that's all I've got for tonight, guys. I'll see you in pre-market. We'll see you in the pre-market call 1 hour before. I don't know if everybody tunes into that, but we're on every single morning an hour before for about 20 minutes, just talking setups, talking pre-market action. So we'll see what we got tomorrow morning. But I do feel good. I feel like I have an edge in a few places, and I'm excited for the next 2 days. So see you guys in the morning, and have a good night.